start, first of all, with your big picture, and then we're going to go around the country from locale to locale. What's the big takeaway for you from last night?
So I think the big picture is that people are pissed and Democrats need to keep fighting. And it's really that simple. I mean, it was a blue wave election. A wave is when you see things crest all across the country in sort of similar circumstances. And what we're learning this morning is not only did we have big wins in New Jersey and in Virginia and in California, but mayoral races and city council races and school board races all across the country. We had flips and gains and wins. It was kind of incredible. I mean, I've watched people who are in a state waking up this morning and reporting on, Blue Sky about what happened in their communities and the size of the victories. The second thing is the margins, right? The margins were extraordinary. Sherrill is going to win by 13 points in New Jersey. Spanberger's up 16 points this morning. Just going through the list, Prop 50 is a 28-point margin this morning. No on question 1 in Maine, 28 points. We won the Supreme Court races by 22 points. We won the Georgia PSC races by 26 points. Mamdani broke 50, which nobody thought he was going to do in a three-way race. I mean, where Jay Jones in that race that everybody thought he was going to lose is up by 7, right? So we had our performance. We didn't just win; we won big and decisively with huge margins in places that really matter. So this was a across the board, comprehensive victory for the Democratic Party and a huge consequential rebuke of Donald Trump, Trumpism, and the Republicans at a critical time of crisis in Washington. It's a good day for our democracy and a really bad day for Donald Trump.
Absolutely. The other thing, Simon, that I think is so important was the turnout. Astronomically high. They haven't had that many people turn out in New York City since 1969.
John Lindsay.
And it was really extraordinary. And as you say, the depth of the wins, switching 13 House of Delegate seats in Virginia has not happened in my lifetime. It is extraordinary. And before we go place by place, I want to emphasize something that we've been arguing at the Contrarian, and I know Simon agrees with. Elections are won on emotion, on guts, on importing a fundamental feeling and a message, which is this is not right. We are going to have your backs. It does not involve massaging every candidate, fine-tuning every bullet point on the policy list. If Mamdani can do that in New York and Spanberger can do that in Virginia, they both have a place at the Democratic Party, and we need to embrace them both. And this notion that we don't like somebody who's running in New York City, even though he's successful, that's loser talk. We have to embrace winners.
Jen, it's the A to Z philosophy of the Democratic Big Tent, from Abigail to Zorn.
There we go.
Everything in
there we go. Yeah. All right. So let's go, Simon. Let's take our trip around the country. Prop 50. Initially, people thought, oh, Gavin Newsom's nuts. This is not popular. How are you going to do this? You're not going to qualify. And the victory was enormous. It was also perhaps Nancy Pelosi's swan song. Talk to us about how Prop 50 won so big and what that tells other states who are contemplating doing the same thing.
Yeah, look, Gavin is a dear friend. I helped him get elected mayor in 2003. I mean, we've been friends since. And, one of the things about Gavin Newsom that we're all going to get to know is that he's got a very high risk tolerance. He is willing to take enormous risks and engage in fights that he believes are worthy of the battle. He took this on when there was enormous skepticism. I mean, he saw the energy in the family after what the Texas Democrats did, after what J.B. Pritzker did. I'm sure they polled, but I'm sure that there was, I'm sure in their initial polling, it was like a jump ball and not a decisive victory. And they went for it. And they raised a lot of money. They ran incredibly compelling ads. And the ads, by the way, were very anti-Trump. I mean, this is the other thing that's really important about this sort of internal debate in the family about what the right message is. These were just nakedly anti-Trump, This guy is ruining the country. He's hurting our democracy. He's cheating and trying to rig the elections. And I listened to voters last night on MSNBC in the vote, waiting to vote. And it was incredible how many people said, I'm here because I think what Trump is doing is wrong. This point you're making, right? There's this sort of like, this is wrong. I'm here to set it right. I have a job to do. So huge win. And I do think it puts enormous pressure on, first of all, it's a direct win against Trump, right? This is something Trump was doing. Newsom, Trump head to head. Newsom kicked his ass. And this is important because we need to see Trump losing and struggling as part of our ability to win. But the second thing is, I think it does put, Jen, as you pointed out, tremendous pressure on the other states that can redistrict to match now what California's done. They've seen that it's popular, that it's successful, that it works. It buoyed, Gavin Newsom's national standing. And I think you'll see other states, work to match. And Westmore was on TV last night saying that despite some reticence in the Senate, that he's going to move ahead with his own independent process. And so I think Gavin has been a leader here and set the example, and I think others will follow.
And we need to see that in New York. We need to see it in Illinois. Don't wait, Democrats and contrarians around the country. We need that now. The Calais decision is coming from the Supreme Court. That is going to allow perhaps some measure of a freer racially discriminatory redistricting. We need to go now. That is a lesson of last night. Bring a bazooka to a knife fight.
So going west to east, I want to stop at a place that hasn't been much mentioned, and that was Colorado, where there is an initiative to tax the rich in order to pay for food for kids. This was the anti-Trump, let them starve Marie Antoinette theory of government, and this was let the people eat some bread and some meat and some milk, and let's do it. And I think this was talk about timing. Oh my goodness. The same week that Trump turned off, food stamps, turned off SNAP benefits. That margin was significant too, Simon.
Yeah, it was over 20 points, I think, was the final margin. It was a huge win. And you're right. By the way, Trump this morning, this is an important thing that happened this morning. Trump is this impulsive, gluttonous animal, right? Like everything is immediately in front of him, and he's not a strategic thinker. And this morning, he just blurted out that, with the senator sitting there, that pollsters are telling him that a major reason they lost was because of the shutdown, essentially acknowledging that he effed up and that they blew it. And that he said, after the press leaves, we need to talk about this. And
absolutely.
And what we mean by the shutdown, I want to be clear about that, is that it isn't just the government shutting down and Mike Johnson running away like a coward and all that. It's the way that Trump reacted to the shutdown, which is that he then validated our essential argument about his malevolence, about his more for me, less for everyone else, about his illiberalism in the way that they approached it, cutting off food stamps, right? And in this heartless kind of way. And so what Trump did with Russell Voigt's ear, voice in his ear, all those steps that he took has made this worse. And we got polling this morning from Navigator showing that Donald Trump's personal approval rating in managing the shutdown has eroded dramatically in the last few weeks, that he personally, more so than Republicans or Democrats are winning this argument. He's taking a huge hit in his brand. And we know that in a lot of the polling out in the last few days, that he's at his lowest point now that he's been. And in many polls, I want everyone to know this, he's lower than Joe Biden was when the national media declared that Biden had to get out of the race, right?
Absolutely.
And so, Jen, if I could just say one other thing just as a top line, and then we'll get into the states, is that we had polling coming into the election showing that basically there had been somewhere between a 7 and 12 point shift nationally from last year. The what's called the generic ballot is averaging about 7 to 8 points shift. In some, it's even more, closer to 10 or 11. In the Gallup Party ID, which tracks Party ID, we've gained 12 points since last year. So there was evidence that the whole thing had shifted 7 to 12 points And then we had these polls in the red states like Ohio and Alaska and Iowa, in Texas, where our candidates were competitive in states that Donald Trump won by 10 or more points, signaling that there really had been kind of a structural shift of all voters all across the country.
Absolutely.
That's part of what we saw last night. I want to be clear about that. Yeah.
One, this notion that somehow there was a permanent shift of young people or a permanent shift of non-white voters in 2024 was way overblown.
Yep.
Secondly, what this means, if you are a Democrat contemplating a run in a red or purple state next year, go for it. In a wave election, which I think it's going to be, it's going to sweep in a lot of people who might not otherwise on paper have a great look and a great chance to win. And the third is Democrats use this advantage. You are exactly right, Simon. Trump is now in a panic. Democrats dare not give an inch in this fight. There were people talking about an off-ramp, giving this away just for the promise of a vote. Nonsense. You guys hold tight. Use your advantage. This is what politics is about. It is not about giving away the game after you are within the red zone of a football match.
Yep.
So,
Jen, I to that point, it's such a good point. I thought that Hakeem Jeffries was brilliant last night in doing, even though the House races were not on the ballot, obviously the midterms are for all the marbles.
Absolutely.
And he was so effective. Jen is right, was a vibe election. We don't want authoritarianism in our country, but in a very simple, compelling way, he said, look, this is about affordability. It's about healthcare. It's about anti-corruption. And that corruption captures, I think, the vibe of what Trump has been up to. And he didn't learn his lesson. He doubled down on corrupting the rule of law when
Absolutely.
he spoke to the Republican senators this morning. He's taking exactly the wrong lesson out of it. That brings us to two other very important places.
We will get to the legal ones, Norm. We will get the legal ones.
One is Pennsylvania. We shouldn't neglect Pennsylvania.
No, we won't. We'll get to the legal ones. Let's go through the political ones first. Let's do together Virginia and New Jersey, Simon.
Yeah.
These two women, I met them both in 2018 when they were running for office for the first time. I have stayed and gotten to know each one of them over the years. Phenomenal women. They are national security Democrats. No one's going to call them weak on national security. No one's going to call them weak on crime or weak on the border. They wound up with huge, deep wins. Abigail Spanberger by like 16 points, but the shocker may have been, because the pollsters were telling us it was much closer, was Mikie Sherrill in New Jersey. What happened in New Jersey that allowed her to win that bid?
Well, I mean, in both races, these were waves. I mean, everything broke. I mean, what was amazing last night, because I've worked on both of these races. We've raised a lot of money. I know both of them very well. And I was the chief strategist for the DCCC in 2018. And so I was part of the team that created the strategy that recruited candidates like Abigail Spanberger and Mikie Sherrill and Jason Crow and Alyssa Slotkin, right? This amazing class that came in 2018. Is that, these were across the board wins. And part of what is going to be significant about New Jersey, because it has enormous significance for the midterms next year, is that we saw Democrats recreate their margins with Hispanic voters that had been lost. That was so consequential for us, because a lot of what put us into the 50s in recent presidential elections, as opposed to the 40s, was our margins with young people and Hispanic voters, which are these two very fast growing parts of the electorate. Those margins unraveled in 2024. And what you saw in New Jersey and Virginia, is the Democrats recreating sort of this upper end coalition like we used to have. And it was just, I do think the New Jersey race is the one that's going to break the heart in the back of Republicans. They really believe that race was competitive. They had a bunch of their crappy red wave pollsters telling them this was within margin of error, including this ridiculous polling firm Atlas in the last couple of days that dropped a dead even poll. So they were deluded to believing they had a shot there. So for them to lose that race by 13 points, Chitterelli is not going to even get to 44%, it looks like. It was a blowout in a race that everyone... So these were just across the board deep victories for the Democratic Party, huge rejections of MAGA Republicans. And I think in Washington, Jen, for this issue of what happens next, the New Jersey and Virginia wins are going to be the ones that are going to be the big shockers for the Republicans in Congress.
Absolutely. What was so interesting was Donald Trump embraced Sherrill. He went to New Jersey. He campaigned on the ground. And when you have the Republican candidate embracing Donald Trump, giving him an A for everything, then when you lose rather on his side by 13 points, you can't say this was not a repudiation of Donald Trump or the Republican Party. That's what was on the ballot as well.
Yeah. Particularly, yeah, go ahead. No,
the embrace went both ways. Right. Citarelli and Winsome Sears were full on Trumpy. So they also put
Trump was smart enough to stay away from Virginia. However, he didn't stay out of New Jersey.
But they were not smart enough to reject him.
Yes. Last political one, and then we're going to go to all the legal ones and the race ones.
Yeah.
We're getting
Simon wanted to chime in, Jen.
No. Let's keep going. Let's keep going.
All right. New York. There's a segment of the Democratic Party that cannot take yes for an answer. When you have a candidate who gins up the electorate, who brings in new voters, who galvanizes young voters, who gives them a message of affordability, and he wins big, that should send a message to folks that it's not that Mamdani as a candidate should run in Iowa. It's that you have to find candidates who connect with voters, who communicate that gut level message. And I would implore my Democratic friends who have been freaking out for the last 9 months or however long to knock it off, learn what he did, and figure out how to find your own Mamdani, your own electric candidate. What was the key for him putting together this coalition and overcoming this huge level of skepticism about him, Simon?
Well, he's an exceptional candidate, right? I mean, for a guy this young and had only been a state rep, he kind of exploded on the scene. His skills were incredible as a communicator. His team did a phenomenal job in accentuating, sort of creating a brand for him that was modern and connected with people in New York. He told the immigrant story, which in New York is still this, my family were all immigrants to the New York area. It's a very resonant story for New Yorkers. He was an exceptional leader. And I think what's so interesting about last night is that we saw so many different ways that Democrats won, that we're in the process of doing what's required for a healthy political party, which is that we're reinventing ourselves. We're adapting to new circumstances and building a new thing that we needed to build. Gavin Newsom led and created new media opportunities in the way that Mamdani did, right? But in a different way. It was a new reinvention of the form that we saw Gavin do. He even put out some great AI videos this morning of him beating Donald Trump in a boxing ring, right? And we also saw, though, a new kind of Democratic Party emerge in Virginia and in New Jersey, right? With Sherrill and Spanberger, women, the first woman to ever become governor of Virginia and all of its long storied history with their national security backgrounds. And so my view is that this kind of diversity of ideological approach, this diversity of the way that we communicate is a sign of a healthy party. Absolutely. and not a party at war with itself. I mean, we have to embrace the rainbow and our diversity.
Absolutely.
And now we have to help these folks succeed. We want Mamdani to succeed. We want Sherrill and Spanberger to succeed. I think the Democratic Party comes out of this in any democracy. We're not a top-down command and control thing. We have to go invent and reinvent the form every 2 years. And what's important is that we're learning how to beat this Trump now. We just beat him decisively. now more so than we did, by the way, in 2017.
Yes.
And so huge night for us in all of you who've wanted the next Democratic Party to emerge. Well, we certainly saw huge pieces of it start to emerge last night.
Absolutely. And what I loved is he not only quoted Eugene Debs, but he trash talked Trump on national TV when Trump was watching him. All right, Norm, you've been so patient, beyond patient. And I know it's been hard, but here we go. Maine. Simon actually was heavily involved, his group and his fundraisers and his activists in Maine. What happened in Maine, Norm, and why is that important?
Donald Trump is on a nationwide campaign to take away your ability to vote safely and freely and fairly. And he had a series, he and his allies put a series of voter obstacles on the ballot in Maine, needless safeguards, because it's less than a statistical rounding error. You can count on one hand the incidence of voter fraud there or anywhere. And Maine voters resoundingly saw that for what it was, an effort to take away the ability to safely, freely, and fairly exercise the most foundational freedom, I would argue. It's the freedom that underlines all other American freedoms, the right to vote. We choose our representatives. Our representatives don't get to choose us. Donald Trump doesn't get to pick his voters. And by double digits, Mainers said, go back to Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump. We don't need your voting hurdles here. So big win for democracy.
And for those who don't know the particulars, it had additional ID requirements. They didn't like that. It was taking away early voting and early access. They didn't like that. They kicked that out. All right, moving south along the eastern seaboard on our little drive. I have this picture of a little car with the three of us driving along. We get to Pennsylvania. 3 Supreme Court justices were on a ballot to be retained. That's the way the Pennsylvania seat works. And I attribute, Norm, this enormous win, 20 points, by the fact that we covered this race. We had on the chair of the Democratic Party, a wonderful guy, Eugene Pasquale, and the head of the ACLU. Why are state Supreme Court races now so important?
The big 4 marquee or big 5 marquee races, Pennsylvania was the one that tended to fly under the radar. And Jen and I talked about a month ago. We're like, oh my God, we have to cover this. It's the Pennsylvania Supreme Court race was so important because when Donald Trump tries to steal elections, one of the hurdles that he needs to overcome is state Supreme Courts. They are one of the ultimate safeguards in saying, no, Donald Trump, you didn't win those races, those 7 states that you contested in 2020. And in fact, I litigated on behalf of the state of Pennsylvania those voter cases in 2020 where Donald Trump was falsely claiming he won. They wanted to take over the Pennsylvania Supreme Court so that hurdle would fall. Much to their chagrin, they failed. It's not for lack of trying. A Donald Trump multi-gazillionaire ally. He's like a smaller version of Elon Musk. Mr. Yass spent millions in that state to try to confuse people. It is a somewhat confusing how you vote in these judicial retention elections. It didn't work.
Yes.
And we have hung on to a 5-2 majority in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Very good news for democracy. These state Supreme Court races, Wisconsin was another one this year.
North Carolina.
Tremendous stakes. North Carolina. Contrarians, you litigated You supported our litigation in North Carolina, in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, we sued Elon Musk, who also tried to buy that race. In North Carolina, we represented conservatives, actually, who said, no, we're not going to allow the legitimate victor, Allison Riggs, who happened to be a Democrat. We're not going to allow Allison Riggs to be kicked off the court, even though she won.
Right.
So very good news in Pennsylvania.
Yes. Now, before we leave the East Coast on our drive around the country, you were in court. Our allies were in court a few times yesterday in New Jersey. What was going on there?
Yeah, in the era of Trump, Jen, we can no longer leave any election and any vote unprotected. And Contrarian's one of the wonderful, wonderful things you do with your paid subscriptions. Is all profits go to support democracy litigation. So, for example, we represented another friend of the Contrarian, Juan Proano, his Latino civil rights organization, LULAC. We raced to court because in Bergen County, New Jersey, there were some ballots, legitimate ballots, that were in jeopardy of not being counted. So we were in court. I will say the Republican Party was very angry. They issued press release. It was all over social media that we secured the right of hundreds and hundreds of these ballots to be counted. They were so-called naked ballots, legit ballots that were mailed in, but the inner envelope was missing. There's no real question about their authenticity. It'll have to be cured under New Jersey law. The voters need to be contacted. And Jen, they gave us the names of all the voters. The judge ordered it, and the voters will have the opportunity now to correct their ballots.
And by the way,
and that was New Jersey.
A measure of the enthusiasm that you were talking about, Simon, the number of same-day registrations in Virginia was huge. That means people who had not registered but were getting excited, their friends were voting, they got down to the polls and they said, I want to vote too. That has to be part of that intensity that you're talking about, Simon.
And I also think that Obama's rallies matter.
Yes.
I think it sort of woke everybody up to that there was an election happening.
Absolutely.
And it drove the kind of, late registration. I think you saw it in California. I mean, they were shocked at the volume of the election day vote. I mean, they knew there was a very heavy mail vote, so they were expecting election day to be a little bit more subdued than it was. And so, yes, we saw surge voting on election day, and I think that in the very, it takes a village, right? Like, to win an election, a lot of things have to go right. But I think Obama's entry in on last Saturday, I think, will be seen as an important moment in what happened.
I could not agree more. He's still, and I think he is now re-embracing his role as really the one of the most important figures in the Democratic Party. He's really the model of how you put together a coalition, two-term successful president. And he's still, my goodness, he can still bring a crowd alive.
But I want to give him a compliment. Of course, my law school classmate and friend. I wouldn't be here on this show if it weren't for Barack Obama, or perhaps more accurately, the law school admissions counselor who put me in the same class as him. I thought he did it in such a tasteful way because he waited for the candidates and the issues to establish their own identities, their own traction. And then, as an elder states person should do, he came in to give a little push at the end. So it gave a lot of space. He's not chewing the scenery. He really did it just the right way. So hats off to my old friend.
I agree. All right. Let us end on California, our home state. Wasn't enough to win the World Series. They won the World Series of redistricting. So, Norm, what other states do you think can now follow Gavin Newsom's lead and get going? You talked about the need to get going. What states should we be looking to? And should Contrarians start asking their representatives and their governor to push for?
we now need Maryland. Wes Moore, Jen talked about getting the message. Wes Moore got the message. He's redoubling. He said Maryland needs to come along. Illinois is another state where there are seats to be had. New York. Look, Gavin Newsom could have said, oh, it's too hard to do. He found a way, and we need to see similar efforts in those other places. Contrarians, you were a part of this victory lap as well. Thanks to you, myself and my colleagues were able to represent that Texas legislative delegation, and that their bold move was what made it possible. They set off by leaving Texas. They raised the stakes. Newsom answered their call. So, Jen, everywhere we look, we see the contrarian hand, but we need you now. Illinois, Maryland, New York, contrarians, get
Absolutely.
tracking. And of course, your paid subscription makes all of our great
I will-
coverage and all this work possible.
I will end with this question for you, Simon, before we go to my favorite part of the show, which is what we're looking forward to. And that is, you think the Republicans might be having second thoughts about the way they have redistricted Texas, relying on those 2024 numbers, thinking that Hispanics are in their back pocket. You think any of them are looking around thinking, oh boy, maybe we made some vulnerable seats?
Well, I think this is why if the Democratic margins with Latino voters are restored because of Trump's, not just his anti-immigrant activities in these communities, but the issues around affordability and healthcare. I mean, Hispanics are the biggest users of the ACA and Medicaid. Hispanics are, on the margins of our economy. So the slowdown in building and so on. The Hispanic community is under siege economically and politically right now. And Democrats, if we mount real campaigns and do what we have to do to talk about the issues that really matter to working Latino families, it's going to have a big impact potentially both in Florida and in Texas and in Arizona and even in states like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and other states, right, where there's large growing Hispanic communities. And yes, the sort of the wild claims of this kind of structural realignment that happened after 2024 now look comical. I mean, because Trump is, in some of the polling, Trump is now, we also saw a very strong youth performance for Spanberger. So, Democrats are in the process of re-stitching together the coalition that drove our best presidential electoral performances since FDR's presidency in recent years, and one that is a majority coalition. We need to recreate our standing with Latino voters and young people in order to do that. And we made enormous strides. So yes, it has enormous implications and by the way, it's also going to matter in the California races that are now going to be contested.
Yes.
Right. So it has a huge impact on the House and also potentially the Senate if we can make Texas competitive in 2026, which polling says today is not out of the question. I mean, it's going to be hard, but not impossible.
Absolutely. We have reached the point of the program where we say what we are looking forward to. There's so much to be looking forward to now. Simon, what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to getting some sleep. And I'm looking forward to not having to publish Hopium 7 days a week because I feel that I can't let up. I am looking forward to taking a few Sundays off in the next few weeks. I have not taken a day off since the election last year. And so I'm ready to get a little, but I'm also looking forward to the Democrats learning how to step into their own power and operate from a place of strength and power and confidence and winning, and to get over this period of this tentativeness and this that I think sort of imbued our politics over the last year and a half. We're strong, he's weak. We're winning, they're losing. We're successful, they're failing. We're the heroes, he's the villain. We need to operate that way every day in order to go do what we have to go do to defeat this guy.
Absolutely. Norm, what are you looking forward to?
So much, Jen. We've talked a lot from the day that you quit the Post and I quit CNN about the fighting for our democracy and the rebirth of American democracy out of the terrible forest fire that is Donald Trump. And I think if you look across I write about it sometimes in my publisher's column. I'll talk about it today on Katie and Norm's Legal Fight Club on our Contrarian YouTube channel. The 5 Ps, how democracies make U-turns. Court proceedings to stop the autocracy, then push forward with all the things we saw, success in and at the polls, public protests, those 7 million people, press, like our independent coverage and what Simon does at Hopium on Substack, and political leadership. We saw a new generation. That's the 5th P. In some ways, the hardest of all, we're seeing a new generation of political leaders emerging from A to Z. So I think last night will be remembered as an inflection point on the path back to a new American democracy. And I'm excited to see how it unfolds and to cover it and to fight for it here at the Contrarian.
Absolutely. And I am looking forward to 2 things. One, friends, buckle your seats. We're going to be coming up with another Contrarian merchandise drop. So hold on to your hats, hold on to your coffee mugs. And yes, that blue mug is going to be coming to you very soon. So we will have more about that in the days and weeks. Yes, in the days and weeks.
It's coincidentally Dodger blue. Pure coincidence.
Yes. Pure coincidence. Yes. And what I am looking forward to is the breakthrough candidates, the first woman governor of Virginia, the first woman Democratic governor of New Jersey, the first Muslim mayor of New York City. America is a refutation of everything that Donald Trump has been saying, that there are certain people who are the real America and all of us are just a bunch of scoundrels and freeloaders and people who need to be eliminated, the enemy within, bunk. We told him no. We told him we are all the real Americans. And I could not be more proud of the American people, of all of you for getting out there. And if this does not motivate you to keep in the fight, I don't know what will. Winning is good, people, and more winning is even better. So take your coffee break. Simon, please get some sleep.
Oh, my Lord.
Rest
the
up.
Longest coffee.
And then get out there, start recruiting candidates, run yourself, run for city council, run for school board. You saw what the results are. I mean, it's a wave.
Jan, that's a great idea. We should have the Contrarian Candidate College.
There you go. And what's more, friends, make sure you keep up your subscription to the Contrarian. Tell your friends. It's fun here. It really is. I had a great time last night, great time this morning with Simon and Norm, of course. Simon, thank you for everything you are doing for democracy. Thank you for joining us. I love doing Politics 101 with you. I love nerding out over polls and figures. And Norm, it's always great to talk about the latest in the legal landscape. Friends, thanks so much. We will be back tomorrow with another special guest, also a Democratic guru, someone who used to run a state party and has a few ideas about how to organize and keep the momentum going. See if you can figure out who that is. Thank you all. Have a great day. We love you, Contrarians. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
See everybody.
Bye.